I'm Lawrence Francis, host of Interpreting Wine, welcoming you to the Mosaic of Wine Series 1. Giving my audience of wine lovers, students and professionals from across the world access to some of the most interesting, successful and influential people working in and around the world of wine. Series episodes explore the guest's backstory, covering their foundations, growth and legacy, using Interpreting Wine's Mosaic storytelling model. I would love this episode and this series to be the start of a conversation, so please make sure you're subscribed to Interpreting Wine podcast to be alerted when each series episode goes live. We continue the Mosaic of Wine series today in the company of Jenny Hemmer, Executive Director at GuildSomm. We kick things off with Jenny's origin story, from marketing studies to joining the Gallo sales training program. We take a self-directed learning deep dive and talk mentors and mentorship, discuss Jenny's current day-to-day at GuildSomm, the importance of face-to-face time complementing virtual teams, career and leadership development, and staying curious on the wine journey, before talking how to maintain personal motivation, time management and family support, before getting into GuildSomm membership benefits. Jenny gives us an orientation to the platform before we talk GuildSomm podcasts, the future of audio, and expanding the reach of GuildSomm, before Jenny shares details of an exclusive Interpreting Wine free trial offer. Enjoy.
Thanks for having me. A pleasure to be on the podcast. Yeah, I'm over 21 years now in the wine industry, which is just fascinating to think back on and reflect on. I'm currently as Executive Director of GuildSomm International. But as I think back to even those 21 years ago when I started in Gallo's leadership kind of sales development program, understanding retail, learning shelf management and cold box management and display standards, and how in a retail outlet can little tweaks that you do within your merchandising or distribution or shelf placement, what does that mean to the customer at the end of the day that doesn't always, have somebody in the aisle talking about wine. So really understanding the product from the retail side, and then on premise and on trade and in restaurants and fine wine shops and liquor stores, the full variety, I think really just helped me understand how consumers purchase, how consumers kind of show that brand loyalty, but also what can we do in the wine industry to get people to be, curious about trying new brands and new categories and new types of wine as well. So,
and I know I'm taking you back a little bit, but which hopefully it's a happy trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
But it sounds as though they kind of, in the best possible way, you were kind of straight in there at the deep end. And I'm just curious, had you sort of grown up around wine? Had that been something important to you, or was this, I guess, your first introduction really to the world of wine?
For the most part, it was my first introduction. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Missouri in the United States. And, oftentimes there was a lot of beer and whiskey and different things. But certainly, wine 25 plus years ago was, just trying to kind of understand the place in a meal, how, sweet wines had evolved and different people getting into the drier styles, or just the curiosity around more well-known varieties. So I really didn't have experience within wine. I was a business marketing major and had the opportunity to find the Gallo winery, so the E&J Gallo winery, at a career fair, talking about this sales program that really helps people understand the product, the business side of it, the distribution side of it. And those candidates were placed at a large distributor around the country in the US. I was placed in Dallas, Texas, and had, a huge territory of really large grocery stores and convenience stores and everything in between. But it really, again, kind of helped set that foundation, understanding product from the $3 bottle up to the $300 bottle, and truly understanding what consumers were looking for and how to differentiate. And that really evolved into different management and marketing roles, and ultimately out in California for a number of years working out of Gallo's corporate headquarters and managing public relations and ultimately wine and spirits education for the company.
Quick one for those of you listening who work with producer groups and wine regions. If you're struggling to break through the noise and communicate your unique story, what you might not know is that Interpreting Wine offers best-in-class marketing services to unlock your unique character and tell your story more effectively. In today's competitive wine storytelling landscape, we've developed a transformative 3-phase approach. Tell better stories, increase event engagement, and activate untapped audiences. Transforming how you connect with your target market and driving measurable business results. We've reached full capacity for client projects with no new engagements until 20th of January 2025. Lock in our 2024 prices before they rise in January. Head to interpretingwine.com/2025 prices, where you can read the full blog and join the waitlist before we close. Now, let's get back to the podcast. And I'm just curious again, in whatever way, sort of, across those different roles. I'm curious, were there sort of, I guess, intangibles there, things that I guess kind of couldn't be taught almost, and that you just had to kind of learn by doing and by having that face-to-face interaction and I guess reading body language and all of that good stuff.
Exactly. I remember early days in this sales training program, one, just trying to differentiate Chardonnay from Sauvignon Blanc and, Pinot Noir from Merlot, but also trying to understand how do we, as almost sales consultants, work to find a way to add value to, bringing in an additional Chardonnay in the section. Maybe it's adding a, by the glass placement, but really trying to get into the mind of the consumer. And those are things I think just from the experience and being told no plenty of times, in the midst of it too, but figuring out ways to overcome those objections and really think, okay, what can I do differently next time? But also, what does this account really need? What is this wine list? What is this restaurant or, a catering establishment? How can we be a value to them in that side of it? And that's, I think, where the education probably intangibly came into play, because I was always trying to find a way that I could do a little bit different education for those customers. So that way, at the end of the day, they're the ones able to more confidently sell the product when we're not there, right? We're truly on the sales side there. But I think those are the things that just to experience it from the ground up was really vital, I think, for my career too. Amazing. And
again, as I sort of mentioned at the outset, you mentioned around your own sort of self-directed interest and, self-directed learning. So, could you maybe, talk a bit about, I guess, that part of the equation, maybe that's maybe something that's kind of hidden from view, really, what you do when you're out of work or kind of, how you, kind of get your head around the topic and then maybe then relate it back to what you've just introduced there. How did you then make that learning experience different, unique, more memorable for the clients you were working with to add value?
Sure. So when you think about, I think, what interests you, right? When you're trying to learn a brand new industry or learn a new role or, job or skill set, it's kind of where do you naturally kind of get excited about the learning? And certainly on the distributor wholesaler side of the business, so much of it is about, kind of getting the correct placements in the accounts. And yes, there's hitting sales quotas and different things on a monthly or quarterly basis. But I always kind of found that interest in, tell me more about that region. If we just brought in a new, kind of French wine, I want to learn about that particular region. I want to have these extra tidbits of information because, one, I thought they were interesting and give me a map, right? And then that's even, more fun to be able to kind of dig in. But not everyone is going to get excited about that side of it. And I think over my 20 plus years, certainly I know my colleagues and former colleagues and just, acquaintances in the industry, we all kind of have our own ways in which we've kind of found success over the years. And really for me, it was how do I learn more? So there's so many certification organizations out there, and I've done most of them, to an extent, whether that was the Quartermaster Sommeliers, WSET, Society of Wine Educator, and so on. And really, I just wanted to start to get that foundation of some of those certifications and then keep building upon those. One of the most unique things, I think I kind of became known, my role at Gallo, of even if I wasn't in an education capacity or a specific role, I would get pulled in or I would volunteer to teach a wine 101 class, or, go to a distributor or one of our customers and teach on a particular area, just because I enjoyed it. And I really found just that excitement of being able to help someone understand a complex topic and see them, see how that could help them in their careers as well. And that's kind of ultimately what got me, excited and really interested in staying in the wine and spirits education side. It was actually when I was the national college recruiting manager for Gallo. So I was going around to different universities and, engineering schools and winemaking schools and marketing schools to try to recruit employees. But that's actually when I became a certified sommelier and really kind of dived into those aspects of studying and certification, just because I knew that was an area that I wanted to explore more, to be able to help our on-premise accounts and our sales teams that were, kind of talking that language every day.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And I think it's really cool. You mentioned there the kind of, teaching the 101, and, there's that old adage, isn't there, that, the way the brain processes information, when you teach something, that's absolutely
right.
when you know, sort of head to toe, that you've kind of internalized all of that. And I think it also kind of gives you freedom once you've got all of those foundations and fundamentals there, to then kind of build that understanding and build that knowledge. But yeah, for what I'm hearing is that, absolutely getting people early, getting them excited about the journey early on is
right.
Of course, you're not going to get them further down the line if they're not excited, engaged, and just kind of bought into to wine and bought into the journey right at the start.
Exactly. Although I guess on the flip side too, when you start to teach wine, it even shows you how much more of a particular topic there is to learn, right? And I think that's where oftentimes, it's just so important to put in that extra work, put in that extra research to be confident in what you're presenting, but also whoever's listening to you and learning from you, they're going to take that and share that with their team and their customers and their friends. So, to kind of be grounded in this very kind of factual information is so important, because, as we talk storytelling a lot in the wine industry, when it's, part of it is the just beautiful stories of many producers, but also for a region and preserving the history of those two. It's so important to make sure that you do have, very accurate information that you're presenting. Yeah,
absolutely. And presumably then that was also something that was, as you say, you brought in this sort of self-directed element, but that was sort of something that was, I guess, part of the Gallo playbook as well, though, was to make sure that those stories were there, that I guess they had made a point of drawing out what were going to be those unique, memorable stories, and then presenting them in a way that you could get excited about, you could get those stories across, and then, of course, the clients, the servers, the teams, they could then transmit that excitement to the end consumer and customer.
Right, absolutely.
I love it. So, we'll I'm sure we'll talk about Gallo more. I think it's a fascinating experience that you've got, and what I'd really, I guess, lead us into talking a bit more about here. I'm always curious about, maybe some of the influences and mentors that my guests may have kind of had along the way, and I know that you mentioned sort of colleagues and study groups and lots of people that I guess have you've helped, they've helped you, and it's been that sort of relationship. And you also mentioned as well the head of PR at Gallo, being, I think, somebody who kind of helped with that transition. So I've mentioned a lot of people there. So I think just in whatever way makes sense, let's maybe bring in some of those other people influences that again have sort of helped you towards the position that you find yourself in now.
Yeah, I feel like I was very fortunate to be able to, work in an organization like Gallo for so many years, where you're pulling in expertise from all levels of the organization. And, as a vertically integrated and largest winery in the world, there were, leaders from the PR side, the winemaking side, the sales side, the marketing side, and to really kind of pull all those together. And at the same time, also working with many of the distributors and restaurants, so kind of pulling those in. And I think finding a mentor sometimes isn't as easy as one would think. Oftentimes you reflect back on it and realize, wow, in the middle of that, I really, found somebody that I could trust, but they could also lean on me. So I was fortunate within even just my early distributor days and still staying in touch with many of those that have since gone on to work for maybe different wineries, different spirits companies, different restaurants or distributors. But also, really, I think sometimes it's finding a mentor outside of your immediate role has helped. So, yeah, we talked earlier about the VP of Public Relations at Gallo, who I still talk to and still lean on if I'm preparing for a large strategy meeting, or maybe it's just trying to understand different work dynamics or different scenarios in order to really make sure that I'm thinking about all different lenses. And oftentimes, again, within one particular role, we might always kind of think about problem solution. And sometimes oftentimes it's not that simple. So, how do you really take a step back and get insights from so many different people and organizations? And especially in our wine industry right now, trying to understand how do we collectively, find ways to reach new consumers or, educate in different ways that doesn't have to make it so daunting or intimidating. And certainly, Lawrence, you know that firsthand through your storytelling and just trying to interpret wine, right? And then the mentors that truly helped me achieve or, pass different certifications, giving me those foundational, pieces of information. But I've taken their styles, their presentation styles, and figured out ways to kind of turn those into my own way as well. But, it's an industry that so many people are excited to share and give back, whether or not they've achieved their own personal, success mountain or reach the top of that mountain. It's how do we find ways to give back? And that's, ultimately, small, little transition to GuildSomm there too, is, having these different discussion forums and study groups that virtually people can connect. I think it's really important to really, help the world of wine seem a little smaller and connect faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raise a really important point there, is that, there are just so many ways that, I call them hooks, really, ways that we will kind of capture people and draw them in. And I was only reminded in a conversation this morning, I absolutely wasn't in the world of wine. It just wasn't on my radar, as little as sort of 9 years ago. It just wasn't a thing for me. And I've always remembered that it was actually, you'll probably like this story, it was actually a distributor in the US, over there on the Pacific Northwest of the US, who was actually making videos about the wines and the wineries that they were working with. But they told the stories of the wine. So they were sitting there, they were tasting the wine, and they had the wine in front of them. But in these sort of 12, 15-minute videos, they would maybe only spend about 5 minutes actually talking about the wine. It was all around where they were, who they were seeing, the experiences they were having there on the ground, how they were feeling. And, I'm a huge fan of Spain in particular, I think, as most people know. And because they were specialized in importing Spanish wine, it was like, easy for me to just binge all of the episodes that they had up there. And really, I think when you get to, what somebody's kind of love is really, as it was in my case, and you just give them that information, and then it happens to be tied to the wine, it's I think a very easy transition then, and I was completely hooked.
Yeah, it's amazing sometimes, those little experiences that can change your life, right? And here we are.
Yeah, and I love telling that story because I just think that I think almost the way I picture it is everyone on the route, from the vineyard all the way across the the seas or the skies, and all the way across to where wine is being enjoyed and consumed and sold, and in these international markets, say. I think we can all help the process. We can all, I think, help to build the resilience of the wine industry. I think it's I know it's tough for a lot of regions and a lot of producers out there, but I really would like to think that we can all work together to stimulate demand. I think too often maybe we're like, okay, that's it. People are drinking less wine. They're interested in other things, so that is the state of things. But yeah, okay, that's the state of things now. But I think we can all influence that, and I think if we, right, as you said, love wine and want to give back, then now is a great opportunity to kind of do just that. Yeah,
I remember early in one of my PR days and doing an interview talking about a particular winery, and with our PR agency as well that we worked closely with, and I just got some great advice. You know, they said, just pretend that you're standing there in that beautiful vineyard that you were just telling me about, you know, off camera when we were talking about, you know, where did you go last week and what did you visit? And, you know, we can't all just walk through vineyards on a daily basis. Of course, winemakers can, and that's, you know, an amazing opportunity for them to really know the land and really understand, you know, kind of from the ground up and from grape to glass. But if we all just kind of take that step back, and that just helps so much with that storytelling, right? Or just really kind of seeing that passion and excitement come through, because you're picturing what it felt like to walk through those vineyards and feel the breeze and see the fog roll in. And sometimes we almost have to be too scripted at times, right? When we're thinking about, what are my talking points I'm supposed to say? It's no, just take a step back and just enjoy that beautiful view and, you know, and all that brings.
Yeah, it's so true, and I know that you know, press trips and getting out to the country and visiting are important, but I think really that's where, for me, I just think the internet still is just magic. You know, it can bring us all of these things. It can bring us podcasts. It can bring us videos. It can take us there. Of course, it's not, you know, 100% the same as actually going to the video. But again, I still get excited talking about those those videos that I watched back in the day, because they literally, you know, transported me to Spain. So yeah, it works, you know, and I think there's just so much opportunity for storytelling when you think about the internet, when you think about all the different channels that are out there. And hopefully we've given some listeners some ideas about how they might like to get involved. But so let's change gears a little bit here, Jenny, because I'm again fascinated by, I think we've, you know, established the rigor really of the background that you've had, and the sales, the PR experience, all of the education. I think it's, you know, a really kind of unique and powerful set of skills, let's say. So I'd like to again, you know, change focus to really your current role, and, you know, ask you to walk us through how you've applied this expertise in your work, you know, as executive director at GuildSomm International.
Yeah, so I'm coming up on 3 years or close to it, joining the GuildSomm team. And I had used GuildSomm for a number of years when I was studying or just trying to have a complementary resource that I was also using, whether I was, again, studying for a certification or just within my materials and my research at Gallo and doing education there. And GuildSomm is so unique. We only have, you know, 5.5 full-time employees, and yet we have a global reach of over 9,000 members, because we partner with so many experts and writers and winemakers and masters of wine and master sommeliers around the world, that allows our very small team that's virtual to expand globally as well. So when I was approached, again, about 3 years ago, and just reflecting back on, you know, what did I want to do in my second part of my career, you know, almost 20 years with Gallo, what do I want to do? And I've always just really found myself, you know, towards that wine education, and how do I connect people together and resources, and if somebody's needing a study group and so on. And that's exactly what GuildSomm has to offer. One, it has an incredible library of resources, from very foundational staff training guides that can be used during pre-shift, all the way to very detailed wine law compendium that our team is fact checking and staying up to date daily on those law changes, but also just a way to have a community that's, you know, kind of discussing in our forums or finding a study partner from, you know, in London. And I realized that felt like such the kind of perfect time in my career to be able to kind of give back, but also to reach even more people. I loved all of my time with Gallo, and certainly to have the connections of a very wide-ranging distributor network and employee base. But what's unique about GuildSomm is it's anybody in the world that wants to learn about wine or spirits or beverage, as well as, you know, all of the different regional organizations such as Wines of Germany, you know, Napa Valley Vintners, Sonoma County Wine Growers, you know, Wine Australia. And so we really partner with all of those entities to help create education and provide that information to hospitality, to somms, to really just any student of wine. And there's lots that come into play, right? As being an executive director, I'm pulling in some of my PR and my HR experiences, a lot of times my sales experience, right? When we're seeking new membership opportunities and sponsors. but it's still very grounded within just that education side. How do we make sure that we have the most accurate and comprehensive information to share with our members? So it's really, again, looking back now, almost 3 years, there's a lot that's been done, but it's exciting to kind of see, I pulled from that experience 15 years ago, right? And working in those retail stores or something too.
Yeah, and just curious again, because I remember you mentioning in the pre-call as well, about, I was really surprised, I think 6.5 full-time FTE, and probably couldn't be more different from Gallo. So I mean, I'm just curious again, when we talk about skills transfers, and also I think dipping back into culture, what has been that transition like on a personal basis, and by all means, maybe bring in examples of things that you might have changed or adapted, or that have kind of marked out your tenure really.
Yeah, luckily I feel like I adopted the virtual meeting experience even long before the pandemic. And that's because I was either based in California, or then I had relocated back to Kansas City, Missouri at the time. And oftentimes, I worked in that large corporate environment in California for Gallo. So I had the cubes right next to me, and I had the meetings and, kind of constantly rotating, and the networking lunches every single day. But then to move into a virtual experience, even when I was still with Gallo, I think really helped kind of shape the way that I want to manage, and the way that even our GuildSomm team just wants to come together and sometimes just talk, right? I mean, I think sometimes we get so tied into what do we need to accomplish at this particular meeting because we are all so busy. But yet, this is our team, right? I mean, our team of 6 that is really impacting the content and the information that our members receive. We're a nonprofit organization and a membership-based organization. So everything that we're doing, it's for our members and to help them hopefully succeed in their passion and grow. So it's important. I mean, whether it's, a virtual baby showers that we'll do, or sometimes just coming together and let's just share how our summers were. We all kind of followed each other along or caught up on quick meetings. But it is important, I think, to realize that no matter how busy we are, conversation and just getting to know each other, when we didn't come from that. I think that's another unique thing, that as people are changing jobs and changing careers and then joining teams virtually, there's a chance you could go a year or two, if not more, without ever actually sitting down with that person face to face. And we really, I think, can, we can't take the importance of that face-to-face time, for granted, because when we can get together, it's important to just get to know each other, right? I think that helps just your knowledge sharing, sometimes even just that, just that empathy sometimes, right? When we're all going through things. So I kind of took that a different direction.
No, but, I love it. I love it. And, my mind is then, thinking really, as we're really in this section talking about expertise, I want to ask you a really broad question, really, I guess being, again, some time into the role and then, having to kind of look ahead, I'd be, really curious to hear, what do you think are, I guess, the leadership skills really that you've had to draw on since being in role, and maybe, sort of peering ahead, what do you think might be, if there are sort of other leadership skills that you think are going to be, equally important to come into the fore going forward?
Yeah, I think people need to realize and just give themselves credit that every experience they had, it's going to be different than someone else's, and that's okay. And that's going to build upon it. And what I mean by that is, I was starting at the ground level at Gallo in a distributor network, stocking shelves and working inventory backstock. And then I learned, every kind of technique in the sales side and had that to then pass on to the next person that also had to start in that same place. So certainly you have that confidence because you did it at the very beginning, and then you've taught that to others. And then to come in, even in different leadership roles, whether that was a new department that I entered within Gallo or over, to help lead the GuildSomm team as well, I think you have to have that empathy to know that everyone else kind of learned their own role in a different way and had those different experiences. So actually it was a former boss and manager at Gallo that was so, so generous and gave me a nice book about just how do you lead for the first 100 days in a new role. And here I I left Gallo and he was covering my, my team in the interim, but he knew how important it was to, sometimes just lead by listening, right? And just getting to know each person and getting to know each particular area. And sometimes I feel like it takes a couple of years, if not this 3-year mark even for me, to feel like, the organization changes, people just change within their own expertise and the way their own leadership styles in their roles, whether it's our editor or our director of education or marketing or membership, all those different areas. So, that style, it was important for me to say, I know the type of leader I am and I want to listen and be very involved, but I also have to be patient and know that I have to be able to just, really understand, the entire side of the industry and the organization too. I think at times too, it's even helped that, as people are on vacation and I'm covering, for different leaves of absence or things, that has tremendously helped me to be able to kind of live, a day or a week in the life of those particular roles. They're not my full-time roles, right? Yeah. But now I know how I can be a better leader and support for them to be able to, do their job more efficiently or even more effectively.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it even plays to something that I didn't mention earlier, which was, I think you mentioned around the importance of staying curious. And I think if you've got those two combined, the empathy to actually, be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but then also once you're in their shoes to maintain that curiosity, then I think you get a real understanding of that. And then, as you say, in that relatively small team, it's a temporary thing. You're going to be going back to your role, but then you've gained a whole new perspective on what that person is doing, and I'm sure as well, other ideas to kind of bounce off them and to suggest and to kind of again, I think keep the boat moving, right? Keep things on the right sort of path.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that staying curious was kind of my motto last year. And I thought, well, I really enjoyed it. I'm going to continue that for my 2024 motto as well. There's so many ways that the industry is evolving, ways that people learn and digest information, whether that's on social media or different classes that they're taking or books that they're reading. But, regardless, it is how can we find ways that it's fun, of course, but also what's the benefit? A Gallo, it's not just a Gallo saying, but it was features to benefits a lot. What is it that you're trying to maybe sell, right? And what's the benefit to that end consumer or the retailer or the restaurant? And I carry that through a lot too of, if we want to be innovative in a certain area, why, and what's that going to do for us as a company, of course, right. To be able to be a successful company, but also what is that going to do for our members and our sponsors and, the different entities that we work with. Yeah, no, really, really, super interesting to, get that kind of, behind the scenes look. And really, what I'm a huge fan of really in these conversations, of course, you've spoken about your leadership style, what you think is important in leadership, but then I think it's also important to, maybe talk a little bit about some of the challenges, because, I think as well, those are also areas that I think will help the listener. And again, I think will want to learn and empathize and again, understand more. And I know that, you mentioned the balancing kind of career, family, personal aspirations to study. It's not always easy. And you mentioned something that really stood out to me, which is it's always important to, remain clear, I guess, on your why in order to be able to stay motivated and kind of, push through those challenges, which presumably are often, time and potentially sleep related. So, I'd just be, curious to, to understand a bit more about those two, really, about, I guess some of the challenges of that balance, but then also, that motivation, that maintaining the why that's really enabled you to again, keep moving and, keep improving over time. Yeah, I think about my very first kind of official wine certification was the Certified Specialist of Wine through the Society of Wine Educator. And I think it became, maybe it was somewhat of a prerequisite for additional education paths or, different experiences when I was with Gallo or so long with the company, and it just made sense to take that. So that was one that might have been a little bit of me, but also a little bit of an assigned, certification. But then from there, and we see that often, right? If you're working in an establishment, I know, there might be a certain restaurant where, in order to maybe get a promotion or a different type of position, there may be a prerequisite required, whether that's through WSET or the Court of Master Sommeliers. Every place is different. But I think people start to kind of hit that why in the road to an extent of, is that something that they are truly passionate about on their own? Do they have their own desires to become whatever, title or experience? Or sometimes is it just about the journey, and that you're okay if you don't become a master of wine or a master sommelier down the road, but it's the journey of learning. And so for me, I had those times in some of the early certifications where, I'd like to say all the time in the world, still, a full-time job and a husband, but no kids at the time, right? So that made a difference as I got deeper into my studies, especially when I went for my certified wine educator and then WSET diploma, which I just completed earlier this year. My kids, they're now 7 and 9. I have, tiny onesies of them with sommelier onesies on, right, while I'm studying in the background, or I have their baby monitor up while I'm trying to, or have my phone up with app and review quizzes from GuildSomm as they were trying to fall asleep at night, all the different things. And sometimes I am envious of those that did a really just fast path of, and very successful in their certification journey quickly and a little earlier in their careers. That just wasn't me. I had, kind of different roles, different paths that sometimes it made sense to be studying and pursuing, and other times it didn't. And I'm okay with that, right? I mean, it's one of those, as I reflect back, when I was doing a lot of my studying for the WSET diploma, I had started it about a year before I came over to GuildSomm as their executive director. And I'm so glad that I had already started it when I did, because I think I would have given myself a lot of excuses, just coming on and trying to really understand a new company that I'm working with. I may have said, I'll wait another year or two before diploma. But I was already in it, and I knew I wanted to keep going. So I just, I had my weekends pretty much fully dedicated to studying, with the exception of, youth basketball or youth soccer or youth baseball, and of course to enjoy the evenings and such. But, at one point my son, who was probably 7 or 8 at the time, said, "Mom, are you studying or are you working?" Because they'll see me with my computer, with my wine books and my, my notes, and probably blind tasting as well. And I had to just say, it's both, buddy, right? Because I'm fortunate that I am in a wine education capacity. So it's both, but there are so many people that are studying wine and becoming, masters of wine, and it's not their normal job. And I just give so much credit for those that are kind of balancing lots of different industries. But I hope that my kids, and certainly I have a very supportive husband who would pour all my blind tastings for me while I was maybe putting the kids to bed, and I'd come down and he would already have my flight because he knew my weaknesses and he knew what I needed to kind of taste and compare during my different studies. And so that's what I had to make work for me. I didn't have a big study, blind tasting group that I could go for a few hours. I couldn't make that part work. So I'm fortunate to pass through diploma, very successfully with all of those distractions as well.
Well, I'm sure nobody passes diploma by mistake. So massive congratulations if you've managed to get yourself through that. I know we've just recently had exams, and I've been sort of following all of the stressed out posts and people discussing the wines that were in the exams. The
questions, the wine, I know.
Yeah, so no, I really take my hat off to you for getting through that, and I think also credit to the to the family and the support that you had around that, and I just think making that network and making that kind of family unit work for you. I think it's great. Right. I think it's a really important story to kind of get out there, because I think maybe there, even if there's just one person that kind of hears this and just thinks, I've had my kids, or I've had a couple of kids and it's too late now. I think it's of course it will bring different challenges, but maybe you realize that, okay, let's think long term. Let's again think about why you're doing it, and find a why, and you'll find a way.
I love that, and enjoy it too, right? I mean, so much of it is you're learning about these amazing regions around the world. You're learning history. You're learning science. You're tasting and enjoying wine along the way. So you just have to kind of can appreciate that and just have some fun. One of our master sommeliers that works on our team, he was about to sit for the final piece for his MS exam, which was the tasting component. And we were all wishing him luck virtually on Slack, because that's what we do when we're all, around the world. And his response was to our well wishes was, "Thanks, I'm excited to taste some wine."
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I loved that, because it's not like, have I done all the preparation? Because he knew he had. Yeah. And he passed, I think, because he had that mentality of, I'm going to go enjoy some wine. And I'm going to hopefully nail those wines in the blind tasting too. Yeah,
and I'll share a brief story from my side as well, which I remembered today. So I studied maybe 3 years ago for the Spanish Wine Scholar, and it was amazing because, again, totally in love with all things Spain, and you'll tell me off for sort of sharing this, but I'll be honest. I went to the class, I did the tastings, and paid attention, but I really did very little study in between, and didn't really challenge myself in that respect. But I guess the reason, or one of the reasons why, was I'd had this sort of bedrock of knowledge about Spain. So I felt as though even if they'd sort of given me the test on the first week, I would have had a good stab at it. So I was very lucky that I was able to just really enjoy and completely take the pressure off myself. But I think even somewhat counterintuitively, I did remember a lot more from the lessons, because I'd almost said, oh, okay, I love Spain, this is going to be great, but I've already got a good basis, and even there were things that came up in the exam that I didn't know before joining the course, but they'd soaked in, and not because I'd had flashcards and I'd memorized them, but more just because I think during the lectures I was just very present. I was super engaged with the materials, and we had a great set of lecturers as well, and those things all building together, and I think just that relaxation just meant the information sort of washed over me, and it was there at my fingertips, luckily without too much stress when we're under exam conditions.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, we all try to multitask so often, right? But I feel like if I'm doing yoga, I feel like my yoga instructor is saying, be present, be here. This is your time, right? And if we thought about that for our 1 hour webinar that we're going to listen to on a particular topic, or even just a meeting, right? We're already thinking, well, what's my next meeting? So we're giving lots of life skills here, right? Just be present and enjoy.
That's it.
Yes, exactly. Just do a little yoga meditation.
This is great. But again, I think these are the skills, and these are the lessons that we learn. I think actually, we are, in a way, hopefully, going around, what might be some of the things that, set you apart as well as a leader. I think, empathy, a huge part of that is being present, right? It's hard to be empathetic if you're there on your phone, or if you're thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner tonight, or where you're going to go on holiday. People can tell, so, that being present, I think, is massively important. And, it can also help you pass an exam as well, if you're like me. Amazing. So the kind of next broad area, and I feel as though it's great you've really sort of started to take us into this journey, is really delving a bit more into what I call service, and I think in this part of your career, it's very much as the exec director at GuildSomm International. I think again, welcome you to talk about the kind of unique process for delivering educational content to really the global beverage community. Maybe take us through at a high level and in a way that makes sense to you. What does that process of information transfer kind of look like, and what might be some of the benefits, really, I guess, that the members enjoy.
Sure. So when GuildSomm started 15 or so years ago, oftentimes it was, finding a community where people can come together and share ideas and connect, and then academic content that, was housed on the website of the platform. And then it's just expanded drastically since then, from, again, very kind of foundational e-learnings and videos and quizzes. And where we are right now at GuildSomm is, really trying to kind of parse through, is this the way that learners really digest information, and how can we kind of help shape even their learning journey at times if they don't have an education department at their company, right? If they don't have a mentor or a wine director or a beverage director that's kind of pulling them into their existing tasting groups as well. So, we are continuously looking at not just category by category. So earlier this week, we have a new study guide on the wines of China, which is fantastic to be able to kind of dissect that not even emerging region, right? There's so much history with that, but just as we're trying to understand. And one of the techniques that we've learned, we had an MW, Gus Zhu, that actually wrote the piece for us, which was fantastic, is how do we actually study China and the various appellations and understanding that is different from just understanding California AVAs or something like that. So, we want to take those a step further and now have just we call them study halls, but they're just kind of small, informal kind of Zoom gatherings where people can come and join and just discuss and talk about that particular topic. So it's not just, here's information on China, you go out and read it and hopefully you understand it because it was well written, right? We know that people are going to have questions, and that's really the beauty of having the GuildSomm platform. That's a really dynamic conversational platform that people can kind of chime in with, I love this, but I'm still not understanding this part of the guide, or, something about the map maybe. And the dialogue within that, people chiming in from around the world, is always really fascinating to see, for those that really are just curious, right, about it, or maybe they're studying, or maybe they're doing a dissertation or MW paper on it. And so we're constantly trying to find different ways, again, that we can help people understand this complicated topic, because a lot of our information is very technical. It's a high level of expertise with also some very, just fun, approachable articles and digestible pieces of information. So it's looking at it by categories, looking at it by different mediums in which we can kind of showcase, the information. And you and I talked about this too. It's just about different things on social media, or different things with, different podcast series. What are ways that we can keep evolving, right? Because if we're not changing, someone else is going to jump in and do that too. And, we're unique, that because we don't certify any we don't post any exams, we're not affiliated with one particular certification body, but we still want to make sure that we are growing and evolving as everyone else is too, right, within their journey. So we have some new ideas, and one of the new sayings, I tend to just like having a lot of different sayings, as my team knows, but finding success by failing faster. I think I mentioned this to you when we talked a couple of weeks ago, and we're trying that out for the remainder of this year and into next year. If we have an idea, let's go quickly. Let's not have, we don't have to analyze and build out procedure for every new thing. Let's try something. If it fails, that's okay. We all kind of have that permission to do that, as long as, obviously it wasn't too costly in the mix of it too, but we might find some really great things that come out of those failures as well, right? So we're just going to be trying, different ideas and different things, but also really stay grounded and continue to build out all of our different guides and videos and different topics too.
And it would be completely remiss of me not to, ask you specifically about audio. As you might have noticed, and people seem to be noticing more, I'm talking a lot more about audio rather than only podcasts. I'm a huge fan of that mode of processing, and podcasting is one way to access that, but there are tons of other ways. There are, of course, scannable QR codes to get you the audio. There are on websites you can have audio blogs playing, or you can have audio kind of descriptions playing, and again, I'm a huge fan and massive supporter of your podcast, and love hearing people giving me fantastic feedback about your podcast, and seeing it come up on study lists and lists of recommendations. So I'd love to just pick your brain a little bit, really, about I guess where that valued? Do you feel as though you kind of, empathize with me and my bullishness on audio and see that as, something that you're keen to, maybe explore different ways of bringing value through that channel, which again, I think, in this world of hyper connectivity, it's just such an intimate, personal channel that I really think it's a powerful one that, again, I would love more people in wine to really take advantage of.
I would agree, because again, people are going to retain information and understand it the more, different ways and different channels that they can digest it, right? So reading versus hearing versus tasting, right? All of your senses, as you can incorporate those. I was just having this conversation with one of our members who's a master sommelier and does a lot of education for various facets. And this particular person mentioned that they'll go on and review GuildSomm's, introductory guides or the staff training guides, just to give kind of that refresher before going out and presenting. He said, we would love those guides in audio so that during my commute, during this, or even just going for a walk and wanting to have a reminder of different things. So we've actually taken that and we've already started recording a handful of those that we'll have available for our members here shortly. Again, testing things out to see. But I would agree. We know that just having that option, and especially if it's in, we utilize writers from all different, aspects of the industry and different expertise levels around the world to write for us, and we can help guide, even if somebody's not a true writer. We love working with newer writers as well, and helping tell their story, whether it's sustainability in the vineyards or alternative packaging methods too for wine. But to be able to even have those articles within the author's, conversation and having, their voice as well. So I completely agree with you, Lawrence, that we're playing around with those too, because again, people need information in different ways. And sometimes it's nice to be able to put it at a, 1 1/4 or 1.5 speed and race through it. But it's better than nothing if they're driving and they can't, they can't study during that time, or can't just, learn about a new region for fun even. Yeah, no.
And again, I love that fun keeps coming up in our conversation, because I think it's so important to, again, never lose that sense of curiosity that somehow I think is always going to be there at the start of someone's wine journey, and I think anyone's journey with any kind of topic is going to be a curiosity. Is always going to be, taking that next step, not getting sort of pushed back. And again, I totally, again, kind of, throw the door open to you and your team really to collaborate with me, because again, I just feel as though that world of audio, I think I genuinely feel as though we're just scratching the surface, and I just think some really interesting collaborations, and the way that I like to think about audio as well is almost when you read the book and you're having to kind of create those images in your mind and imagine what this person looks like. That's my take on why people, they'll always say the book is better than the film, because you've got to kind of work for it. You've got to really do some mental work. It's a real, creation of your own mind, really. And I'm convinced that there's something there with audio as well. No matter where people are listening to this conversation, I think we just can't help but fill in the blanks. They'll be picturing you and I. They'll be filling in the gaps if they've seen us, or if they haven't, they'll be picturing where we are and what we're doing. And I just think it's just a natural, almost innate human thing to do that with audio. And it really, I think, for me, I hope it's coming across. I really think it's something special, and I really think it's something that can really help wine, especially as younger audiences are. They're there. They love audio. They're already into podcasts, and they've almost led the charge into audio in many ways. Right. It'll be interesting in a year from now, right? We might have to do a follow-up to this and just see what has changed in, even just that year. Yeah, absolutely. So listen, Jenny, as we kind of, look to unfortunately start to close the conversation, I want to, kind of give you a nice, big, open question, really. I'm really, getting your passion, and I know that you've got this big goal to support and encourage anyone looking to learn more about wine, spirits, and beverages. But I'm curious, to at this stage of the conversation, just kind of revisit that question. What is it that kind of still drives this passion? within you, and what are maybe some of the lasting impacts that you're hoping to kind of create in the industry through your work with the GuildSomm?
As I try to talk to members all the time, whether that's through phone calls or Zooms, or if we have in-person events too, and it's so refreshing and just kind of humbling as well, to hear like how important GuildSomm's community and platform was in their journey to, again, maybe it was to pass an exam, but maybe it was to have the confidence to take a new position, in a different part of the world as beverage director for, whatever establishment. And I see that. And then I also see that at the very kind of just enthusiast, early kind of wine drinkers that are just so excited to hear little tidbits or little nuances of wine, right? I feel like sometimes it's a matter of, the first time somebody actually hears about how sparkling wine is made, I mean, they're just fascinated. And we all started in that place. And then I think, if we're all fortunate to know many of those experts around the world in wine and beverage, and how did they get there? And so really my hope is that those connections can continue to be fostered through GuildSomm, but also we can grow with everyone's curiosity. I was talking to a kind of a vigneron and winemaker in Sonoma County about a month ago during harvest, and he's a GuildSomm member because he likes to just go on, and he has a small winery, but he likes to just see what are the conversations happening in the forum, how does he maybe learn about a different part of the world. And, we never want to stop learning. And so just having those different types of content, but also just those experiences, maybe it's an event, maybe it's a virtual meetup, right? For people to just connect with others around the world. I think just to be able to continue to be that go-to avenue for people that are wanting to learn is really kind of that big aspiration. And, of course, to be able to continue to expand our membership reach. I think I mentioned this at the beginning. If not, I'll say it again. But, we've got members in 90 different countries, and certainly U.S. dominant at the moment. But it's also great as we continue to grow our membership base, because that just allows us to hopefully do more events and more gatherings, and grow our team as well, right? As we continue to grab more and more of that audience that is looking for a platform to learn.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think, keeping that motivation and keeping that mission in mind, I think it's so important, because just thinking for myself, I don't necessarily get tons of feedback, on an ongoing basis when I'm putting information out there. And I feel it's just, the nature of, when was the last time you left a review on Netflix or, on, I think we've kind of just been trained to, okay, what's the next thing? But I think because of that, then, when people do give that feedback to me, again, just speaking personally, and hopefully you can relate as well. It just seems to mean that much more, because, it just lets you know that you are making a huge difference. And maybe it was, through that conversation that you've had there. I like to think that if one winemaker will come and say that to you, and we'll share that with you, and that impact that it's making, then we can probably imagine that there's 50 or 100 other winemakers out there who just haven't yet had the chance to share that with you.
Right.
Amazing. So listen, as we start to wrap up, I'd love for you to invite our listeners to join the GuildSomm community. Can you maybe share a little bit more about the benefits of membership, including, I believe, a free trial offer that you're going to offer, and some of the specifics about how the listeners can get involved?
Yeah, so certainly go to guildsomm.com, right? And you can see the type of information, the type of new content that we're releasing weekly, whether it's an article or a new China study guide, or, new vintage guides and producer profiles. You'll see some of that content that's available for the public with our podcast offerings, or select podcast offerings and feature articles and some regional videos. But there is so much beyond in those member benefits: the full access to the content, access to different events. We have different scholarship opportunities, with certain partners, or it may be competitions to have a harvest experience in Sonoma County with the Sonoma County wine growers. So there's just so many opportunities to stay connected. There's professional resources like job boards, which sometimes it's helpful just to see what's language I should use for the posting that I want to create for a new beverage director or even just a new, server or wait staff. And those are, again, accessed globally. So ways that you can connect with different members or different professionals around the world as well. And just having that place that hopefully you feel like you can go every day if you want and learn something new, right? There are so many different ways that you can digest this information. And we're just really excited about, kind of having more people in that discussion. It just kind of opens up those connections even more. So we do encourage you to go to GuildSomm.com, follow us on all the different social channels at GuildSomm, pretty simple there. And yes, I think Lawrence will include this trial, but we did a one specifically for interpreting wine, which is IW 1 week. And that will give you a free 1 week trial. And that's the best way to test something out, right? Go in, get lost in the different, areas and categories. And, we're just always excited to welcome new members into this journey too. And you can always connect with me on social or LinkedIn or, other things too. I'm always open to those conversations.
A massive thanks to today's guest, Jenny Hemmer, Executive Director at GuildSomm. Make sure you visit guildsomm.com, link below, where you can find their main social media handles. And most importantly, it's where you can take advantage of the free 1 week trial Jenny mentioned. The code for that is IW1week. And why not reach out to Jenny to let her know what you thought of the episode and ask any questions that it raised. Next time on Interpreting Wine, Mosaic of Wine series in episode 570, I'll be speaking with Julian Gore-Booth, Executive Director of the Institute of Masters of Wine. Subscribe to be alerted when that series episode goes live. See you then.